Yeah, I know. You got to figure. Hey, ever wonder why most organizations don't see breaches coming? Why only after the fact do they start to realize, hey, this is not what we prepared for? Dang, we were not ready. What happens when the next cyber attack doesn't start the way you thought it would, but starts with a voice you trust or a face you recognize? Synthetic media, deepfakes, are exploding, but not because of the reason you think. It's because of the human psychology factors involved. They're becoming standard operating procedure in organized cybercrime. And nobody understands this better than today's guest. Perry Carpenter has spent decades studying deception and human behavior. While most people are still treating deepfakes like a novelty, Perry has become the world's most authoritative expert. And today we're discussing a few things you haven't seen anywhere else. Watch for the nuances in the conversation. You'll see why deepfakes are causing damages that are anything but fake. And once you find out the latest and where it's headed, you'll stop asking whether a video or an audio clip is real or not, and start asking the real question of what really matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. Welcome to America in 2026. Today we explore the gap between where deepfakes stop being impressive visually and technically and start becoming a real part of your risk management strategy, as the damage that they do cause is anything but fake. Our guest is the legendary Perry Carpenter, strategic leader at the well-respected global security awareness company KnowBe4. And while most people are still treating deepfakes like a novelty or a content tool, attackers are treating them as part of their tactics, techniques, and procedures. Perry has spent decades studying human behavior, deception, and how social engineering actually works. He is the author of the authoritative book Fake, which is right there on my bookshelf, which is on the subject of deepfakes, which we dove into in our last episode with Perry earlier this year. There'll be a link to that episode in the show notes and a link to the book Fake as well. Deepfakes have evolved since then, and so has Perry's insight and expertise. Mr. Carpenter, welcome to the studio. Thank you so much for joining Zach and I.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's kick it off with the fast evolution of deepfakes. We saw this year, statistically, they rose dramatically. What are you seeing in terms of trending? You and Roger Grimes and all of the leaders over at KnowBe4 really see a lot of these trends on a global scale firsthand. Walk us through what you're seeing, and then we'll bounce off of that.
So from a percentage perspective, I think we've got a couple more years where we see those staggering percentage numbers. Like I think before we hit record, we were talking about the 2,000% increase that had been reported this last year. Some of that is just it's a function of the fact that we started with small numbers, right? So any kind of compounding of small numbers is going to be exponential like that. But that does not negate the fact that this is increasing extremely rapidly, and we are seeing and hearing more and more about these every day. The other thing that's compounding this is the fact that the tools have gotten so cheap and so easy to use. And not only are they cheap and easy to use, they're shockingly good and effective at the thing that they're trying to do, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing to impersonate a voice or to impersonate a face. The bad thing comes based on the intent of the person that uses it and how they weaponize it.
That's a very good point. So let's be upfront about that, because in general, we see the commercial use of the technology. I mean, it can help in customer service, replicating team meetings. There's a whole bunch of very practical, helpful ways of being able to, rinse and repeat yourself, clone yourself, like being able to leverage the technology. Is it has it gotten so good because the sample size has gotten so small now? It used to be where they needed hours and hours, if not days, of samples in order for the GANs, the technology to match itself to where it becomes almost undetectable by the human eye and human ear. Is it because now they can do it with very small samples?
I don't think that there's a binary single thing that we can point at and why it's gotten so good. Some of it is just a function of more and more and more and more and more training data that's there, and higher levels of compute that are behind it. So that always helps something. But then the other thing is that you do not need much anymore. Like, there are models right now that you can get a very good representation of somebody's vocal tone and texture through 4 seconds of voice.
4 seconds? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So, but
So
the thing
think
that,
of
that
that.
to keep in mind,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, please go on. You were going to make a point.
yeah, I was going to say that the thing to keep in mind with that is that the thing that gets replicated that quick is the tone and texture of somebody's voice. It's like you can hear them say a single word or a couple words and it can sound shockingly like them. The thing it doesn't get right is the cadence of that person's voice, the nuance, the words that they would choose, the disfluencies that they have, the little stutters and stammers and ums and ahs. It's not going to be able to sample that effectively. So for that, you still need a couple minutes. Between 30 seconds and 2 to 3 minutes can start to make that more and more effective. And then, of course, you've got some of the models that can still train on a couple hours. And what I've seen over the past 3 years really has been that the difference between the 3-hour sample size to create a quote unquote professional grade voice clone and the quality of a 2-minute voice clone has gotten those are really close to each other right now. And many times I prefer the 2-minute clone of somebody's voice to the one that's 3 and 4 hours long.
I take it you've sampled almost everyone that is available in your work. And I know that you've sampled a lot of deepfake detections. We can get on that topic in just a bit. But why don't we define terms for people that might not even know what we're talking about? So how would you define a deepfake?
So it's a good question. Some people, when they think about deepfake, they're thinking just about, a video deepfake or something like that. But if we just go back to the two root words, there's the word deep and the word fake. The word deep is relating to deep learning neural networks. That's your artificial intelligence stuff. And the word fake is just fake. So it's essentially a fake that has been created through machine learning and artificial intelligence or some kind of computer generation. And to be a little bit more academic about it, the thing that we would use as a synonym, not a cinnamon, that's
delicious. It's a delicious definition.
The thing that we would use as a synonym for deepfake would be synthetic media.
Right.
So synthetic as opposed to natural. So it's something wholly generated by a computer or significantly touched by some kind of computer. So that's the default term. When a lot of people use the term deepfake, they're also typically talking about the negative aspect of it. They're talking about the more deceptive use of it. Deepfake doesn't have to be used in that way, but there's that slant, especially from cybersecurity professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can go to some of these vendors, you can Google them. 15, 20 of them will come up. A lot of them have free trials. HeyGen, I think. HeyGen is a company that one of the first ones that I used. They've gotten very good.
They're very good.
Their ability to do it, and it's not expensive at all. And it's just shocking. And I mean, if you go to their sites, they have samples of valid reasons to use this technology. Like they have samples of it, right? I mean, there is a valid use. So it's almost like we're dealing with weaponry of some kind or something. Like we have to respect the weaponry, but don't.
It really is
think,
that way.
Yeah, it really is to me, because it's a hot button topic. It evokes emotion, and yet we can't blame the technology. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
we can want to
Yeah.
blame the technology, but I don't know that we can, because it's the intent behind it. It's the intent behind their use.
right.
So,
Yeah, there was a show on Apple TV called The Morning Show. It has
Mhm.
Jennifer Aniston and
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon, I
Yep.
think. And in this last season, they actually had a deepfake incident
Did they?
that was portrayed on screen, to where the network that Jennifer Aniston was working for was, I believe, going to be doing something with the Olympics. And so what they wanted was to be able to translate her voice and her face doing her report into 40 different languages. And so they were using a HeyGen-like technology for that, which is a very legitimate use, because you trust that
That's
face.
great.
That's your newscaster.
Yeah.
Trust that voice. You want to blast that out and be transparent about it. Of course, everybody
Right.
would know that newscaster doesn't really know 40 languages. But then she sees that same technology weaponized against her, where somebody is making her say something that she never said, to set her up to be kind of a scapegoat or a controversial figure in a situation that happened.
And that's really where we're at today, isn't it? Because
Exactly.
there is a great use. Think of this episode right here. If we could
Mhm.
replicate it and deepfake it, we wouldn't just have to be speaking English and just have it
Right.
be subtitled or have it be translated into another language. We could actually have us all speaking in that language, which resonates better for people and expands the reach. So, I mean, you can think of so many logical, practical, innocent ways. But then
Mhm.
the reality comes in, and that is, well, threat actors, the way most people think of hackers, right? People are always, hackers are bad. It's like, no. Hacking is just a skill set. Like, it's not, it's the threat actors, right? It's the criminal
Right.
leveraging technology as opposed to just robbing a bank. And they're going to take it and they're going to impersonate, commit fraud, commit, personal attacks against individuals.
Have any of
Yeah. It is just a new tool.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Go
Sam.
ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious, Perry, if you're aware of any reports from the companies that are producing these tools, if they have estimates or any metrics for benevolent use versus malevolent use of this technology. It probably behooves them not to share that data if they have it, I would assume.
Yeah.
But it'd be
That's a really good question.
That is a good question.
I've not seen reports from them on that. Doesn't mean that they don't exist. I would think that I would have found them if they did, though.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that to like Anthropic and ChatGPT, or Anthropic and OpenAI, and they are producing reports anytime they find somebody significantly weaponizing their systems. They're throwing research out about that. I haven't seen that with 11 Labs or HeyGen or Synthesia or some of the other ones that maybe do relib syncing like Pixverse and Sync.so and others. It would be interesting to, maybe after we're done, I'll do a quick Google search and see if I've missed something. Right now, nothing comes to mind.
Yeah, I've looked and I haven't found anything. And you brought up
Yeah.
the comparison that I was going to make, which is these AI LLM companies have been, I think, very, very, maybe not very, very transparent, but at least presenting some transparency in really sharing the use cases for good or bad of their technology.
Yeah.
I've not seen it in these deepfake tools.
I'll be cynical
and
for
wonder,
a second. And so here's my cynicism on why that is the case. So number one, when it comes to voice, video, and stuff like that, there's a huge backlash from the voice actor community, the traditional actor community, people that do not want that kind of representation, digital representation of themselves, especially without any kind of consent behind it or royalty behind it. When you get to the large language model side of things, many times when Anthropic or ChatGPT puts out a big report saying, look at how our tool was weaponized, it can almost read like a press release because it's showing the power of the tool that's there. And when we're talking about like companies investing in these frontier model companies, because they're trying to build towards AGI, artificial general intelligence, then showing that power, regardless of whether it is being used for curing cancer or it's being used to create a nuclear weapon or enable hackers to do something, it is showing the power of the thing. And so no matter what they're doing, if they can put that positive spin, it's like, oh, look at this really unexpected, powerful use of our stuff, but we were able to stop it. So we're the good guys in this. It's the best of all worlds for them. I don't think it works the same when it comes to voice, video, and things like that.
You don't think they need to prove the concept? It's already, that work is done?
Yeah, well, I think that the societal backlash against the misuse of somebody's face or voice is different than the misuse of a tool that just looks like a tool.
Fair. I wonder if that
So
impacts
that's
the
what the
negative connotation that everybody inherently seems to have around deepfakes. There is no press release control demonstration of technology for good.
yeah, because I think everybody inherently knows that even the good guys in this, like Hey Gen and Synthesia and 11 Labs, those are all companies that are trying to build safeguards in their products because they're trying to they're trying to enable corporations to do like learning and development and expanded communications and things like that. So they're trying to do it in ways that are easy for the companies that want to use them, that have just enough friction to create security, but also enough friction to keep the curious bad guys out. We all know that even with guardrails and even with security, there's going to be a good number of bad actors that are able to jiggle the doorknob just the right way to get past all of those defenses. I don't know that they want to necessarily publicize those numbers right now, because I think that they would get more negative PR because it feels more viscerally anti-human when those things happen than it does when you're just talking about a tool that deals with language or code.
That's a great point.
So, Zach, one of the other things that you and I have talked about, because I have a belief that because business leaders, their face and their voice is now a new attack surface, and we've seen a dramatic rise in deepfakes, I believe it's going to be pretty standard in the tactics and techniques that is used, meaning we all know that we're trying to be socially engineered when we get a phishing email, right? Or when we get a VISH, right? Voice solicitation, when we get a SMISH, when we get that text, right? We've been conditioned to say, oh, here's another one, or I better watch this. Could this be real? And we're getting used to that. I believe that we're going to start to see it become very mainstream. When I presented that, you had a very good counterpoint, and that was the human psychology of AI saturation. Why don't you share that? Because I would love to hear what Perry has to say. Because
I can't remember if you're
wrong.
referring to my inherent distrust of any video, regardless of what it is, or I mean, I think that there's
social media, like in social media. There's so much AI generated content on social media that so many people are getting accustomed to going, okay, that's cool or bad or good. They recognize the emotional response, but they're just not even sure. So before they act on it or share it or do anything, they're going to verify it. And you think that might be helping us.
2 years ago, the game was, can you decipher or determine whether something is artificially generated or natural? And I think for me personally, at least, that ship has sailed, right? The tech is so good. It's no longer a worthwhile endeavor to try to discern between the two. And we talked about just going back into intent. Why is this person, video, voice, whatever it is, speaking to me in this way? What is the intent behind me seeing this content? And that really is the gauge of legitimacy, much more than looking for artifacts or anything else that might tip you off.
Yeah, that's the point that I've been making for probably a year and a half now, is that, about a year and a half ago, there was this crossover point where the tech started to get good enough to where many of the deep fakes that were out there were passable. You might start to see some artifacts and so on, but many of the times that you could see something that was obviously a deep fake was because the person that created it didn't know that better tools existed, or they were lazy, or they were ignorant, or something else. It fell to the attacker not being as motivated or as resourced as they could have been. Now we're at the point where even a merely casual user can create something that can bypass most of our cognitive defenses, especially if they have a really good weaponized story behind the thing that they're putting out there. It's like, what's the motive? What is the emotion that's behind that? How does it fit within a social narrative that may already be happening? How is it weaponizing an us versus them type of mentality? Or is there some kind of authority lever that's there, or urgency lever? All those traditional social engineering things are making us, making any kind of potential defect within a deep fake just kind of glide past our defenses. And the thing that I've noticed over and over and over again is that when you tell somebody that something is a deep fake, they'll generally go, huh, yeah, it's actually obvious because, this person's blinking at an unnatural rate or something like that. What they don't realize, though, is that many times the thing that they're pointing at and saying, well, it's obvious because, isn't actually a sign that it's a deep fake. Because if it was harvested video that was re-lip synced, that blink rate was already there in that person. So they're what they're trying to do is they're trying to comfort themselves and say, I will know that something is fake because I will always see something's off. And in reality, they're not. We are not. That being said, one of the things that and I almost hesitate to talk about tells, because anytime you mention one, there's going to be half of the ones that are out there that don't have those tells, or there's going to be a workaround, or within a month, it's going to be better and that tell won't be there anymore. But like, if I hear a video that was made by Sora or by VO, there's certain qualities within the voice that come out to me. As somebody that does audio work and somebody that lives with headphones on as I listen to things, there's like a readiness within the voice that's created by VO3, and there's a crunchiness that's in a voice that's been created by Sora. Again, that being said, those are going to go away, and it's going to get to be normal fidelity human voice very, very quickly. There are things like watermarks that these companies try to embed. Those are super easy to strip out. And if you were just to type in like Sora watermark remover, there's going to be 100 different websites that come up that let you do that. There's also workarounds within the interface to download things without watermarks. So never rely on a watermark. Even if the watermark is supposedly embedded in the metadata, don't rely on that, because there's ways to launder that out. So we're quickly entering in, and I think already are in, a space where the synthetic media and the real media are intertwined so much that it comes down to really having to ask the question, is the thing that I'm seeing trying to manipulate me? And that's going to be the ultimate question. I think that's what Zach was trying to hit on as well.
Yeah. Like, what is it asking me to do? Right? Like, is it asking me to do something? And then right there, hopefully the context, the contextual awareness will bubble up to the top, and somebody can make sure that they go verify something before they act on it. I mean, for me, I feel,
what does it make me feel? And then what does it want me to do or believe?
Right.
Which is a horribly skeptical way to approach the digital world, but it's reality.
Right. It is. And there's some innocuous things, right? Like cats jumping on trampolines. Doesn't really matter if that's real or not.
No,
I can live with that.
Cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the phrase that I'm seeing over and over and over in social media comments, whether things are real or whether things are obvious fake, is just, haters will say this is AI. And I think that is indicative of the moment that we're in, where people really don't know the difference, but they're wanting to kind of comfort themselves with a phrase like that, with things, in a funny and self-comforting way.
I particularly like when that phrase is applied to something so grotesquely AI that there's some sarcasm, but yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I'm a business owner or a leader in an organization, or somebody in rural healthcare, or in law, and we don't have our own team of deepfake detection and experts on staff, right? What are you seeing organizations, or where would you like to see organizations head to? Like, what practical steps can business leaders, organizational leaders do to kind of create awareness for people? I mean, other than educate them that deepfakes are real, obviously hone in on the fundamentals of social engineering, right? Pausing, verifying, independent verification. I love what you've said when you've been interviewed about code words, right? Like having words that, a non-technical way of verifying whether that person asking you to do something is actually that person, something only the two of you would know.
Yep. Yeah, I think you hit on the gist of what I would say. And so realize, number one, that we're in a world where people, just with the artifact that they receive, the video clip, the audio clip, the email, the whatever, we're in a place where you can't really tell the difference between what's real and what's fake. We're also in a place where many of the tools that we would hope that would tell us the difference are not as accurate as they need to be for us to rely on. And, here at the end of 2025, going into 2026, they're not there. And so the things that we go back to are very old school security principles that have been around for decades, if not hundreds of years, which are, how do we get mutual trust around something? Well, that's things like shared knowledge, like code words, or even just saying, hey, the last time we met, what was that book that you recommended to me? Which was actually a thing that stopped an attack against a Ferrari recently. Asking that kind of question can untangle an attack when somebody's using a deepfake voice or face. So shared knowledge is
that was very
processes
smooth.
and procedures that slow things down.
Yeah. That was very smooth, wasn't it? Like, had a sense, something, his spider sense was going, and they go, what was that book that you just recommended me recently? Right? I mean, that was just brilliant.
Yeah. And that's perfect.
Yeah.
Because I think, we talk about setting up code words and things like that, and that sounds really good. Most people aren't going to do it. It feels weird.
Yeah.
In a lot of context, but realizing the why behind a code word is shared knowledge and trust verification. So there's always going to be something that we can go back to. And we saw that in, old spy movies or sci-fi movies where people might believe that their, a host body was invaded by an alien consciousness or something. And then they're going, where did we first meet 20 years ago? Or what was the thing that you said to me in the bar? It's, can we get back to some kind of shared knowledge? That is very key. And then the thing that we have to figure out how to rely on more and more and get comfortable with again is just slow the heck down. Don't just go with the emotional knee-jerk reaction. The thing that's always been the thing that social engineers rely on is that knee-jerk decision. And we have to slow down. We need to find places where we might need to inject the steps and processes and dual verification and those kinds of things as the technology starts to improve to, maybe at some point detection becomes something more reliable.
I mean, isn't that the same best practice essentially as with phishing? Other than don't click on the email, right? Like beside the not clicking on the email, it really is that pausing, verifying, having a second set of eyes, independent verification. Yeah, call your CEO. Like he doesn't want you to
funny thing
get
is
like gift cards over at Walmart. Like he's really not asking you to do that, or she, right? Like just call him. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
what were you
and
just about
it
to say?
feels really underwhelming to give that answer when people
really
say
does.
it, right? Is they'll go, well, what is the high tech way for me to figure this out? And you're like, It's actually the same thing we've been talking about for decades.
Exactly.
And
Have
they
you heard
go,
of Know
"Oh,
Before? Like, have you heard of Know Before?
Oh,
Like,
boy.
we have a whole content package like that we'll train everybody on.
yeah,
So
yeah." Well, and not only Know Before, but all the other great
all the,
competitors that are out
of
there.
course,
There's an
and
entire discipline that's been focused around this. Yeah.
there are so many
I
good
know we've got
ones,
to get
but
to the book, but
since you're
Harry, I have one
on,
quick.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
mentioned detection tools maybe
Right.
one day getting more efficient, more. Do you have any hope that that will happen?
It's an arms race, so there's always going to be an advantage to people who are at the very tip of the spear with the current technology. That being said, there's people that are lagging, that are finding the cheapest, most easy to use, most accessible versions of the technology, and maybe those things will be the things that the deepfake detectors are better at catching. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get there. The other thing that's starting to work out better for some of the detector companies is that they're not trying to be all things to every kind of deep fake. And so
How so? Can you
they've
explain that?
started to realize, hey, yeah. So when you say deep fake, you could be talking about an image, you could be talking about a voice, you could be talking about a video, you could even be talking about text generation, or so on. And so in that, it's really hard to be really good at all of those different varieties of deepfakes. Also, it's one thing to be good at detecting a recorded packaged MP4, MP3 if it's just an audio file. It's another thing to be able to detect whether something is traces of being synthetically generated when it's being live streamed, like over a Zoom call, because there's different artifacts that exist within different tool sets. So companies that may excel are going to double down on one thing or two things. They're going to say, we're really good at voice and we're really good at captured video. And then there'll be other ones that are saying, we're really good at real-time deepfake detection on Zoom or Teams or other communication streaming platforms. Because in that you're looking for a number of different things. You may even be looking for liveness detection, the ability to how many frames are being dropped, what are the conditions around when frames are dropped, does the audio seem to match the room size and shape that they're in. All of those things can be stacked up next to each other. You could even do real-time knowledge checks and things like that. When you start to narrow down the parameters of the problem that's trying to be solved, then they have a much better chance of increasing their efficacy against those specific use cases that they're working towards. But nobody can be a general be all end all deepfake detector. I think that's a recipe for failure for many companies right now.
Yeah, when you were on CNN, you spoke about that, and you had sampled some deepfake detection samples for the interviewer, and you had explained to her, look,
Yep.
this one claims to be everything, but I just made this deepfake and it's telling me that it's fairly accurate and it's real. I thought that resonated with a lot of people, which was good.
I was actually
go ahead.
I was actually really frustrated in that moment. So not with CNN, but the fact that every deepfake detector that I tried, and this is a few months ago, so I've not repeated the test since then. Every one that I tried had fundamental errors. And if I intentionally tried to bypass them, I could. But then also many of the things that broke them were unintentional things that I did, where I was like testing a real video and seeing, and like the real video would come up as fake. It's like, well, that's bad.
Yeah.
And then I would try to make one that was obviously fake and it would show up as being real. And, some of these were like plugged into systems like online dating platforms. And if there's a system that's plugged into an online dating platform, I want that thing to be reliable. I don't want somebody to, I don't want it to be as easy to bypass as I did, because I'm not an expert in bypassing these things. I just had a little bit of curiosity and some time on my hands.
Right. I mean, and that brings up the scenarios in which this technology is being used, right? Romance scams, sextortion, elder fraud. You hear about calls from people impersonating children to their parents saying, I I got in some trouble, I'm stuck in court or I'm in jail, and then they hand the phone over to the public defender who says, well, if you don't provide bail right away, then they're going to have to stay, in custody until Tuesday when the judge gets back, or things like that. And people's emotions are racing. But again, it's the same advice when that happens, right? It is context, verify, right? Realize where your child is, reach out to your child directly. Be like, hey, are you in jail, buddy? And they'll be like, no, I'm actually over at Todd's house, right down the block. So things are okay. But
yeah,
we have
exactly.
seen it. So Zach and I, in our other life, like our actual livelihood in the MSSP and MSP world, we've come across clients that have experienced deepfakes, which just was shocking to me because that didn't happen years ago. One was a small organization, 20, 25 employees. And they were hiring for somebody that can help them develop SQL databases and some. It wasn't really code, but the point is they didn't have to hire locally in person. They could expand and get better talent. So the interviews were done remotely, and they were bombarded with really good resumes that hit the mark perfectly, too perfectly, which kind of set them off a little bit, right? And then the interviews of the people, they said, looked completely believable. Like if it wasn't for the context and the awareness of the context of it, there'd be no way for them to be able to tell that it was by itself a deepfake. But the questions and how they answered, how they paused a little bit before answering, and then they would answer, and it was a very generic answer when they were looking for specifics. But they were telling us, 10 out of the 15 interviews they had, 10 out of the 15, Perry, were fraudulent. It was fake. And they were just really concerned. They were like, how are big HR, big recruiting firms, how are they managing this with remote employees? Clearly policies and independent verification, making sure somebody verifies that the person that they see on that ID or et cetera is the actual person that they're hiring. But what else are you seeing? I've got to imagine people, when they come up with deepfake stuff, are coming up to you and going, let me tell you what happened. Are you hearing anything in in particular in the HR space, in the recruiting space? Because it seems to me that is so ripe for things like this.
It is. There's been a ton of discussion about it. About a year and a half ago, I think we at Know Before talked about one of our experiences with a North Korean worker that we hired that was actually on for about 5 minutes before we detected what was going on. And so that was our little, our real intro into that. And then the only deepfake involved in that was their photo that they submitted to HR. So it was very traditional, rest of the hiring process. But it really woke us up as to the prevalence of this. And then since then, and since talking about it, we've been hearing from company after company after company that this has happened to in much more devastating ways. Yeah. And to the extent, you were talking about the one that you had spoken to, where 10 out of 15 of their interviews that's like 2/3 of the interviewees turned out to be fraudulent.
That's what struck me. It wasn't just one. It wasn't just one, right? It was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I know that we and other tech firms, whenever we put out a job now, it is not uncommon at all for us to have multiple applicants for that single role that are fake workers. And you also talked about, so let's take the fake worker thing using a deep fake and say that is one use case of that. But you talk about the generic answer side of this. This is something that people are going to be dealing with over and over and over too, because of the prevalence of large language models. It is fairly trivial for me to take a phone, turn on ChatGPT, and then just have that in front of me as I'm talking to you, where you can't see it in frame. And as you're asking questions, I've set it up to where it's receiving that voice input and formulating answers for me that I'm just kind of, reading or riffing off of at the time.
Right.
So regardless of whether you have an actual imposter that's trying to pretend somebody to be somebody else, or whether you have a real person with a real identity who really wants that job, but they're faking their knowledge. We're kind of dealing with a lot of the same things, right? It's what are the compromises that we are letting into our organization, and how do we need to tighten things up so that we know that the person that we're hiring is who they say that they are, and that the knowledge that they have is the knowledge that they actually should have. It lives in their brain, not just in the screen in front of them.
Yeah. And to me, I was in law enforcement before being in cybersecurity. And to me, it amounts to intent. It amounts to, like, the modus operandi changes, their habits change. The technology allows them to harm people at scale, but still we're still dealing with the same thing we've been dealing with for hundreds or thousands of years. Like it is still, fraud, right? It's just fraud, like romance scam. It's fraud, right? Like somebody impersonating your child asking for money. It's fraud. Like that's not the truth, right? And when we are leading an organization, it's really hard to figure out what policies should be set. How do we raise awareness of this? And because of social media and the advancements in technology, I think people feel that it's very special, or that the deepfake is very advanced, right? And so we need something very advanced to do it. But the technology has advanced so much that it's becoming commonplace. Are you seeing? And I want to ask you about what KnowBe4 is launching with, because I think it's brilliant. Are you seeing, or do you have a feeling that it's going to be very, very common, that it's like a multi-medium campaign, right? There might be a text, there might be a one or two emails, a voice call, maybe a calendar invite to get on a Zoom or a Teams call and really target. Now, granted, that would be very similar to somebody doing spear phishing, right? They're actually going after that organization as opposed to blanket phishing. Do you believe that is where this is heading from where you sit?
Yeah. So, when it comes down to it, the way that I talk about it is that every deep fake is just a little artifact. The video clip, the audio clip is just one little thing. That little thing is meaningless and powerless until it's placed within a story or a context. And so when you talk about multi-stage attacks, that's the thing that cues it up, right? It is it is the trust that's given in maybe the menu that is wanting to make you scan the QR code. It's the authority that is in the email that's coming from your CEO that's also asking you to click on something and view a video of them asking you to do something. There's always the how do you take that thing and how do you imbue it with the power that you want? And that additional context, those additional stages, those additional asks are the things that are going to be the things that separate the deepfake script kiddies from the APT level attacks.
Right.
And that's the way that I think about it right now.
All right. So, Perry, one of the things we wanted to ask you about is, can you explain, and I don't know how much you're able to share, obviously don't share all the good stuff, but can you walk us through the rollout of the deepfake technology that KnowBe4 is going to be including in their security awareness program that is being provided for organizations? Because we're excited about sharing that with our clients. So I would love to hear about it from you.
Right. So that's a new addition. And it's one that customers have been asking us to do for a while. We were, honestly not the first to the marketplace in our market segment to deliver that functionality, but I think we're the most intentional about how we delivered it. So one of the things that is a core principle within KnowBe4 is that we want to empower the admins to do things, and we're not going to roll out anything that's not scalable to 70,000 plus organizations out there. And so it had to be scalable. It had to be usable by the admin, and it also had to be safe. And by that, I mean, anytime you're creating a deepfake, you're essentially creating this little MP4 video file that if you're not intentional about it as the vendor that's enabling somebody to create this, you're potentially giving somebody a weapon. If that file can be detached from the training platform and then put out on Facebook, will that make a company look bad? Will it make it, will somebody be saying that they're about to have a merger? And that would be bad. Like if it's a big named company and now you've got the CFO saying that they're about to do a merger, that could impact markets. And so we didn't want to give people the ability to accidentally have those situations happen. And so we have a very tightly controlled ecosystem that allows the admin to create their own deepfakes of their own executives, but in very safe and effective ways for training, but not ways that could be weaponized or become disinformation. The other thing that I'll put a fine point on is when you look at the competitive landscape with KnowBe4 out there, some of the competitors that are helping people do deepfakes, they may enable some of that disinformation effect if it were to be re-weaponized. I don't know that that's happened. That could definitely happen in the future. But the other differentiator that KnowBe4 has, again, is that scalability and putting it in the hands of the admin. Because generally competitors, when they do deepfakes right now, it is almost a custom engagement where you have to email the vendor a video file saying, here's my executive and here's the scenario we want you to create with them. And then it'll take them a week or two of a bespoke engagement to get that back. And that can be frustrating. What if the first time it comes back, it's not what you want? And it's taken 2 weeks. What if you don't want to pay an extra, however much to do that? And so we wanted all that just to be in the platform, the same as creating a phishing template and those kinds of things. And I think we did pretty good. There is definite, as with any rollout, there's definite room for improvement, and we're making that improvement. But as far as checking the boxes for the things we wanted to accomplish, I think we did a really good job, and clients are really, really happy with it.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, and you have other deepfake awareness content as well. It's part of our curriculum that we share with our clients. So that's phenomenal. Perry, I thank you so much for your time and your insight. Zach, do you have anything further?
No, Perry, this was great. Thanks for your insights and transparency. A really productive conversation.
I really appreciate it. I love being on with you guys.
We really appreciate all your insight. We will have links to the webinar, links to the fake book, which is outstanding. If you want to learn about deepfakes, check out the book. Nobody knows it better than Mr. Carpenter. And thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today.